In this first tutorial, we're going to take a look at the new administration interface for Joomla 1.6. I'm going to take you through each of the menus, giving you a quick introduction to the major changes in Joomla 1.6 and some of the really intuitive things that the developers have done to make our lives as administrators of a site a lot easier. As someone who's used 1.5 a lot, I really love what the developers have done in this new version. It's intuitive, it makes sense, and I think it's going to make our lives a lot easier. Now, I will say this installation of Joomla 1.6 does have the sample data installed. It's just the quickest and easiest way to show you some of the new features. Well, let's get started. The first thing you'll notice on the control panel here is an Edit Profile button, and that takes me to, of course, My Profile. You'll notice that the Super Administrator now has been replaced by a Super User. We'll talk a lot more about access control and all of the changes in that a little bit later. But suffice to say, I can always still change this, just like I could before. Put my name in, my login name. You'll notice that the user ID is now 42 instead of 62. And if you're really security conscious, you can create a new user that replaces user 42 with a different one and give them super user administrative rights. The rest of these buttons are pretty much the same as they were before. I'll explain some of these changes as we go. The layout is nicer. The buttons are more explanatory. And I think you'll find that all of the cosmetic changes are really helpful as well. Well, let's take a look first of all at the site menu. Control panel, My Profile, Global Configuration, Site Maintenance, System Information, and Logout. Media Manager has been moved over to the Content menu. Global Configuration is somewhat similar. A few things have been moved around here. We're not going to spend a lot of time looking at this. You'll be able to look at this for yourself when you set your first site up. But of course, the name, the site offline, pretty much the standard stuff here. Default access level, the meta tags, search engine friendly URLs are built in, and they're a lot better in 1.6. The system settings are pretty much the same. The server tab is pretty much the same. One big change here is the localization settings. Joomla 1.5 went on a plus or minus hourly basis from GMT. This gives us universal time, and we're able to go straight to where our server is located. Mine happens to be in Los Angeles. Now when daylight saving times kicks over, this will supposedly automatically work for us. And the new tab on global configuration is permissions. Permissions is part of the new access control that Joomla 1.6 is giving us. Probably the biggest new feature for Joomla 1.6. We're going to look at this in detail later on, but suffice to say for now, this is where you set all of your permissions globally across the board for all of your users. And this is the first place you start when you start to do your access control. You'll notice also that we've got some new buttons and some new terms up here in our menu bar. Save is the old apply, save and close is the old save, and of course cancel is cancel. One of the nice things we'll see up here is that these have become far more consistent as well. After global configuration then, site maintenance. This used to be under the tools menu. We have global check-in, clear cache, and purge expired cache. System information also used to be under the tools menu, which has now been all moved under the site menu. Under users, we now have user manager, group manager, and access level manager. This is fantastic. User manager, pretty standard here. You'll notice that the buttons are a little different. With Joomla 1.6, administrators can now activate users from the back end. And you'll notice that the parameters button throughout Joomla 1.6 has now been called options. If we click on user options, it brings up the user configuration window. Again, some standard stuff here: allow user registration, what will they be, what's the guest user group going to be, new user account activation, it can be none, self, or admin, and the old front-end user parameters, which used to be in global configuration, is now in user configuration. Makes sense. Permissions again, this is the next level of user permissions, and you'll notice that all of these have been inherited from our global configuration. We'll talk more about that later. One of the new changes as well under access control are user groups. This is where you can set up new user groups and manage their access levels. And again, we'll look at that once we get into ACL. Mass mail has been moved to the user menu. Again, probably more intuitive than where it was before. Under menus, we have our same old menu manager and our menus that have been created. The difference is we have now submenus that make a lot of sense. And then again, this is throughout Joomla 1.6. Menus and menu items can both be managed without having to go back up to the menu, which is really, really helpful. So you have your main menus, user menu, top menu, about Joomla, main menu, things like that, how many items are published in each. The modules that link to these menus in any of the positions. This is really helpful. If you just click on one, it brings up a modal window that shows you the menu, the position it's in, and some other things that we'll get to when we get to modules. If I click on menu items, I can choose the menu. So I can filter down, and you'll notice again submenu levels. All of the levels, published, unpublished, trash, access, and language, which we'll talk about later. Another one of the new features in Joomla 1.6 is how we create menus. When I click on New, you'll notice that we're not presented with that huge long list of menu types, but we're presented with the main New Menu Item screen. One of the complaints about 1.5 was that it was a little daunting, once you got a few components installed, to choose the right menu option. And so now you're given the opportunity to put your title in, get some of this set up, and then when you click Select, a modal window pops up and you're able to select from all of the different things that are installed. And the descriptions are now much more clear, much more plain, helping new users choose the right kind of menu item the first time around. Depending on the menu type that you select, all of these things can change. One of the other new things in Joomla 1.6 is developers are able to put plugins that change all of these options specific to the variety of menus that can be created. We saw that a little bit in Joomla 1.5. Joomla 1.6 makes it easier. If I click on one of the menus, you'll notice that this is a little different now. I get to select my menu type inside the Edit Menu Item window, rather than being confronted with that long list from 1.5. I can actually take care of all the details and then go and pick the menu type if I choose. A lot of other options under here. Article options, which used to be parameters. Integration options show the feed link. Link type options, I can add title attributes, CSS styling here, and image here. This is going to be really, really helpful. Page display options, I can give it a title, a different title, a page class, a page heading. Again, this is really going to help with creating unique sites as well. Metadata and all of the module assignments for this menu item are listed there. Again, save is the old apply, save and close is the old save. Save and new is a new button that you'll see here in menus, articles, modules. Save and new just saves it and then gives me a brand new one to work on. Save as a copy saves this one and makes a copy of it so I can quickly edit the new one and get it working without having to start all over again. So some really neat features here. I can mass publish or unpublish. I can check in all of my menus here. Again, one of the frustrations from 1.5 was if something was checked out, you couldn't go ahead and edit it because it was locked. And I can assign home from here just by clicking in the little star here, which is kind of helpful and quicker. Alright, so that's the overview from left to right. The Site menu, Users menu, and Menu menu. Click on the next video for the Content, Components, Extensions, and Help menu overview.